Hello, I am finally getting around to doing an editing tutorial of a photo that I just love and that a lot of you have loved as well. So yeah, I'm gonna record this tutorial and just literally walk you through every single editing decision I make. And honestly, it's quite simple. Um, so let's do that. I'm gonna share my screen and go into Lightroom, which is the editing tool that I use. Um, so the photo on the right is the end product that we're getting. And there are a lot of really amazing things about this photo that make it great. So let me just show you this final photo. So why I think this photo was really such a big hit with my audience is that there is such this really beautiful balance between the light and the shadow, and like the highlights and the shadows. So it really gives it this kind of like melty look. I don't know how else to describe it except melty. And it has this like really nice, warm kind of look to it. And so if we go back to the comparison, you can see that like the original photo does not look like that at all. There are definitely aspects of the photo that will let us create this final image. So I always say that there is a lot that you can do with editing. You can take kind of a bland, blasé photo and give it a lot of wow and interest with creative editing, whether that's cropping or just some light editing or more advanced kind of stuff. You can do a lot with editing. However, their editing can only take you so far if your base image is just really low quality or any sort of element of the photo is taken to extremes. So if this photo, if the original photo was just overexposed or like poor lighting, like just poor quality, really kind of pixelated, we wouldn't be able to get the image on the right. So let's talk about what works with the original photo. So first of all, it's just well lit. No aspect of the photo is really too extreme. So even if we look here at the histogram, there are not really any like extremes in the photo that would like between the light, shadow, blacks and whites that would make this a difficult photo to edit. So it's really just kind of like nice, even lighting. However, we can see that there are aspects of it that make it interesting and that we can play with and kind of accentuate to make the photo interesting. So we have these shadows here on my arm and on my neck. We have the highlights hitting the curves and creating this sort of like landscape kind of look, like this interesting landscape. So yes, and as I was saying, I was saying like my my arm and my neck. So yes, this is a photo of me. In case you didn't know, I am a boudoir self-portrait photographer, and this is what I teach. I teach people how to use boudoir self-portraits as a tool for their own creative and sensual expression. And then I also do things like this, where I teach how to edit the photo to kind of get that really interesting, compelling photo that you are hoping to have as your final product. So let's take a look at you know, my process for editing this photo. So my editing process is usually quite minimal and streamlined. I really don't like to have complicated things or processes in like any area of my life. I want things to be simple and easy and straightforward. So the first thing I usually do with photos is I look at the exposure, and I usually play with exposure highlights and blacks. I don't typically adjust the contrast. I don't go straight to the contrast. I put contrast into the photo manually by playing with the exposure highlights and blacks, and sometimes shadows myself. So I can really have more control over what that contrast looks like. Starting from, let me just hide this so we can focus on the photo. So the first thing I usually do is just play with the exposure. And I'm just gonna start here and play with it as I go. So I think I want to bring the highlights up to around here. And then I almost, in like almost, I don't know, a very high percentage of my photos, like 95% of my photos, I will always bring the blacks down because that adds contrast in a really interesting way. And I will kind of play with how much I want that to be, but I usually kind of like start extreme and then adjust from there. Okay, so this already looks like a more interesting and compelling photo. There are, you can see like the interplay between the highlights and like the darker shadows, like here in my like armpit area and the neck and the like, it's interesting. And all of the light and the shadow kind of create this like journey, this kind of flow of movement and attention in the photo. It does look a little bit bland though. So we're gonna play with the temperature and the tint. So I usually like warm looking photos. And I find that just a warm photo works well with my complexion and my hair. So, you know, I already have like warm undertones. So I like to play with that and not hide it. So I already like this better with the warmer look. Like if I did nothing else with this photo, I already like this better. Let's just see. Let's try that. It's definitely more interesting, but it does look like a little bit like too greenish or too yellowish. So one way I like to kind of combat that greenish tinge is to just add, you know, tint it to the pink side of the scale. And let's see. Okay, so I like that. And also, you wouldn't necessarily know this, but I used these like shiny satiny sheets for this, and they do have like a pinkish color. So already looking in the photo, I can see that like this is more accurate to what the colors actually are, because the sheets look like the actual color that they are. You wouldn't know that unless you've seen the sheets, but that is their color. So I love this. This is pretty close to what I edited it as before. So the one on the left is the original, I think. And the one on the right is, which one am I on? I'm on the active one. Okay, yes. So the one on the right is the original photo that we're currently editing. And then the one on the left was like the final reference image that I was showing you. So it looks pretty good. We can just zoom in and see like these details. So we know that we have a high quality photo because we can zoom in and the details are still there, which really helps us get this like, milky, melty kind of look. And allows us to have this sort of like a really kind of narrow point of focus where like the focus is not my face. The focus is not even like what's on the foreground in this photo. It's not even on like really where the action in the photo is, which is like my hand over my breast. Like there's kind of this narrow middle field of focus in the photo. And it is kind of like a central point in the image, but like all of this activity around leads us into this middle space. And so the fact that it is, the focus is really good and it is a high quality image means that this works. Like if if this photo was like out of focus everywhere, sure, it could still be like a nice photo and that could be like an artistic take on it, but I don't think it would have the same kind of like kapow effect. Yeah. So another kind of effect that I really like to add to most of my photos, just because like that's my personal preference and what I like in images, is I like to add a little bit of a matte look. So I mean, I like both of these versions actually quite a lot. So if I was editing this photo, like again, today for the first time, I don't know if I would even add that, but I really like to do it. So oh, then I think I just edited both of them at the same time. So in the tone curve, I just pull up the very, far left point, which is the blocks of the photo. And then I just pick some random point like in here and I pull it a little bit down and that gives me a matte look. Here we are in the before and after. I didn't edit them, exactly the same, but that is essentially my editing process to get this look. Okay, so just going back to show you the difference between the before and after. And here we go. That is how we edited the photo. If you want to just, take a look at the difference here that I did for the settings. I made it warmer with the temperature. I tinted it to the pink end. I brought the exposure down, the highlights up, and the blacks down. And then I added some a matte look with the tone curve. And that is really all I did to this photo. And it made just like a huge difference in the photo. So there we go with the before and after. If you have any questions about editing or any questions about self-portraits, feel free to message me. I'm also creating a course on how to take better nudes without looking too explicit. So make sure you sign up for my email list to get updates about that. And feel free to follow me on Instagram, where I share more of my self-portrait photography work.